full of, I don't know, approximately 400-ish quantity surveyors to do a Mexican wave. And you all look very excited about that. But I know that you just got caffeinated, so I'm pretty sure that we can do it. So my lovely friend Patrick at the back is going to put some music on again, and we're going to start this end of the room, and we're going to just do it a few times until I feel thoroughly convinced that my life goal has been achieved. Are you ready? Yes? All right, it's not just arms, you have to stand as well as arms. Okay, go Patrick. Over here, are you ready? Precise information instead of padding words and phrases. Now, on that note, I have some very bad news for you. I am the world's least numbery person. I am the world's least precise person. I am completely innumerate, actually, when it comes to that. But I do know some things about QSs, quantity surveyors. You love a good spreadsheet, don't you? You love a good spreadsheet so much that you actually tend to try, if you can get away with it, to even write documents that are intended to be read, like with sentences and paragraphs, in Excel. Who's going, actually, I have no clue how you guys do your work, so I'm not even going to pretend. Which shit should I read and which shit should I not read? And sorry, I know it's not all shit, but you know what I mean? We get so much information in front of us every day, we can't possibly read all of it. Yeah. So, just like the genes, our writing is changing as well. But you might still be wearing a suit. You might be able to just change your dress shoes for sneakers. Or maybe keep the dress shoes, but change the dress pants for jeans. Yeah, so think about, in our writing, how we can maybe just not put on that voice that we've been led to believe is professional. Because I want to suggest to you that if it's hard to read, hard to understand, doesn't get read, because how many times do you send something to a client maybe, and then, or an internal client, whatever, a stakeholder, whoever, and then they call you and go, yes, and tell me what it says. It happens. I know it happens, right? That's the signal to you that the way you've written it, even though it might follow all the rules that you learned, it's not working for modern readers. So, this word pono is about being authentic in our communications. Showing up a little bit more as us, instead of perhaps in writing, putting on that other voice. Can you imagine walking into a room and using some of the words that you may have traditionally used in your reports or your emails? Like, imagine if I stood up here and said, as per Matt's discussion this morning, where he shit-talked Hamilton. Can you imagine having a conversation with someone and saying, it is recommended that the following should be approved, the following recommendations should be followed. That had recommended there twice. I made it up on the spot, it was bad. I acknowledge it. But the voice that we use in our writing, if you spoke to humans like that, they would probably laugh you out of the room or ask you if you're drunk. And I hear quantity surveyors can sometimes be really good at this, just say exactly what needs to be said, get on with things, that's great. So you're ticking the pono box there. What if it's about not switching into a really different voice in certain written communications? What if that's being a little bit more authentic, a little bit more human? Am I saying what needs to be said? And on that note, I am going to leave you for the rest of your day. Thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely
and subcontractors of any tier. Okay, they're the parties that are going to cause an issue on a project if there is. What contract works insurance does is it ensures damage to the works arising from the works. As I can, right? That protects my from any potential claims against me. But you've got to think about the project, okay, that you're working on with regards to these numbers. And I'll give you a real basic example. You're building a house, you have a loss, you've got to clear the site. Now, it's the same plan and the same design. You build it out of timber, you can get rid of it fairly easily. You take it to the tip, they weigh the truck, you pay a fee. You take the exact same design, make it out of concrete, and the costs are completely different. So those are the sorts of things you've got to be thinking about when you're filling in these numbers. Professional fees. It's not, hey, it cost me $500,000 to get all the design done by the engineers and the architects that ripped me off. The principal, particularly because we're paying lower fire service levies and a lesser premium, but there needs to be a conversation about, well, if we're handing a portion of the works over, who's actually ensuring that bit that's being handed over? Is the expectation that the contract works insurance is going to continue insuring that, or are we going to move it to a material damage policy? Because if you don't have that discussion, and then you have a fire, it becomes a really awkward discussion as to which policy is going to respond. Accidental and unforeseen. This isn't some accidental and unforeseen. It should be managed. Second-hand plant could be an interesting one, given the floods in the Hawke's Bay. You've got a lot of manufacturing plant that's been damaged. So what are they going to do with that? The premiums, they changed the excesses around the insurance, and then kind of over time competition came in from other insurers and things went back to where they were before. I was part of it. So it depends on who you're acting for and who's arranging the insurance as to what the excess is. We've had a couple caught out with that clause. All familiar with this? It's pretty self-explanatory. Other than the first two, it's all contractor. All contract works policy making factory, and you're expecting practical completion to be the 30th of June 2023, and you have a loss, and you've taken out a whole lot of money, and the bank's expecting you on the 1st of July to start repaying that money, and you're relying upon the widgets to repay that money, and you haven't got a factory.
For another 3 weeks, I told you that before, friend. Oh, but I want to get them out of the factory. The whole point of this process planning of...
That is like prime real estate, right? And think about how you decide which emails to open first. Can anyone tell me a way that you choose which ones to read first? Date?
First
Time. Like you've got a shit ton of information that you need to cover, and that's just a fact, yeah? But we want it to feel as concise as possible because we've got these answers and we want to find them easily. Skim readable, I've mentioned that. And would that be a fair thing? You're like, I have not got time for your waffly bullshit, get to the point. The problem is when you are the writer, my reader self is over here and my writer self is over here. When you are the writer and that reader self goes away, even though you're aware of who you're writing for, and because you are smart humans, you're trying to be as clear and concise as possible, probably most of us have been like, there is so much information I've got to give you. It's going to be a long email. You're just going to have to read it to me. True? Just kind of, in some ways. It's like, well, what other option do I have? It's like, The problem with that is, we know so much about reader behaviour that even if you tell yourself, oh, they'll just have to read it, they probably won't. Or they won't when you want them to, is more the point. Now, the formula that I'm going to give you for writing amazing emails is designed to get fast action and fast responses. Keep reading unless we have to. Sound true? There has to be motivation. There has to be a reason for us to engage with this. In fact, very quickly, I like to call this our Tinder filter. Yeah? The bad news is when you start to write, your reader usually leaves. So that's the bit that we have. That's where the tension is. You know what a good reading experience is. So when it comes to an email, I'm going to take you through this process that you get a formula that you can follow anytime that it's not a one-liner or a two-liner. Okay? Because one-liner, as long as it's doing its job, it's not causing you problems, fine. It's basically an instant message. We just are using email for it. The formula I'm going to take you through, anything bigger than a 1 or a 2-liner, is going to work for readers. But, yeah? But I want to suggest to you that if you were delivering a message that you were a little bit uncomfortable with, you would want to ease into it and give some background and some context. You wouldn't just want to blurt out bad news, right? Disconnect. Disconnect between reader and writer. Last week's meeting, we made what we thought was the final decision. I'm like, I know, I was at the fucking meeting. So we could move on to phase 2. Even though, like, why are you telling me this? Is it, what do you think? That's the bit that jumps out at you when I skim read? Should we invite the entire project team? Oh yes, please, we would really love to have another meeting. Or should we be more selective? Can you let me know some windows of availability you have for next week? You that the words are perfect words. That's just my voice. Me being natural, saying the things that I would say. What we want to take from this is this point here. Are you going, here are the answers to your questions? That's a bottom line up front. Here's the information you asked for. That's a bottom line up front. I have 3 questions for you. That's a bottom line up front. Can you please send me the blah blah? That's a bottom line up front. I've attached the thingy, can you give me your feedback? That's a bottom line up front. The key here is that you can give that bottom line up front without context. Your writer self will want to give an explanation first before you make the request. Your reader self will love that you didn't do that. Because
about quantity surveying when I started. I do joke, I reckon I could go for a job interview now, and having played around with ChatGPT in the last few weeks, I know how to nail that job interview, so watch out. So, really my co-presenter today is ChatGPT, but only a little bit, because if you have a look, if any of you have used it, have a look at the disclaimer on the bottom of it. May produce inaccurate information about people, places, or facts. So, and anyway, I thought use it. So that's where the generative comes from. It learns from lots of examples of patterns and styles, and all the knowledge fed into it. And this is, don't forget, this is ChatGPT talking. It's telling us that it teaches computers to be creative and make things we would think are interesting and beautiful. However, we need to be careful using it, because it could create content that looks real but isn't. So we need to use it responsibly and ethically. And after listening to Shelley Davies, it learns from tons of examples, and it can create its own original stuff. It's, you know, it uses artsy stuff, but watch out, because it can also be used to create fake stuff. And we've got to be responsible and ethical. Good vibes only fan. It's really long emails with lots of paragraphs in. And it tells us that it's told me that it's intelligent and it can have conversations with people, just like it and me we were doing at the time. It's trained on lots of stuff from the internet, so it knows lots of stuff. And it can understand. Again, I'm just skipping through this because you can go and ask it yourself. So, enhanced data analysts, and I believe it can do. I've spoken to a number of QSs, as I say, both here and overseas, who are using it. It's giving you new ways to refine data very, very quickly in ways you haven't thought of. One of the most common, I said, well, that's not very funny, tell me another one. And I thought, maybe because maybe it's got an American slant, maybe it uses a term like cost engineer or cost estimator. So we got this one, which I don't think's much better. Well, you're laughing, I don't know if it must be considerations. And these are the things that you would have been hearing about in the news. I've actually signed up. I've got getting a pretty good daily email blog from anything that is going to come to the fore. Obviously, we've got an election this year, and you've seen what's happened overseas. is really manipulation and bias. There is bias built into it, so there was a really good example where someone raised a question on using fossil fuels, and the answer came back was basically not going to give you anything on fossil fuels because they're bad. And adversarial attacks, unintended or intended consequence of people using it wrong. And until recently, AI was a concept, right, in the movies.
That is the future of how we work. What's fascinating about the working world right now is that we're in a moment in history where everything is in complete flux. The pandemic has thrown everything up into the air, and quite frankly, no one's exactly sure where it's going to land. Every nook of the home. They vary from the spare room to my kitchen table to the stay in bed all day office. On the surface,